Theme 8, Transportation. Gap filling. Reading 1. Pony Express. Before 1860, there was no quick way of getting mail between the east and the west of the United States. There were no railways at that time, and most mail was sent by coach. It usually took at least 25 days for coaches to reach the coast. So in 1860, it was decided to send mail by Pony Express, which was much faster. Riders with very fast horses were placed along the route. They were at equal distances from each other, and the mail was handed from one rider to the next. Riders were all expected to travel between 20 and 30 kilometers a day on very bad roads. At each stop, 2 minutes were allowed for exchanging the mail bags, but riders were often held up by awful weather, which closed the roads. With the invention of the telegraph in 1861, the demand for Pony Express disappeared. Theme 8, Transportation. Gap filling. Reading 2. Halloween is celebrated in many parts of the Western world, and is a time when people dress up as witches or ghosts and go trick-or-treating. It is undoubtedly one of the most popular traditions in the United States and Britain. The celebration originated about 2,000 years ago with the Celts. These people were the inhabitants of an area that includes Britain, Ireland, and Brittany. They relied on the land for their livelihood, and this meant that they were at the mercy of unpredictable weather conditions, especially during the winter. The Celtic New Year began on the 1st of November, which also marked the beginning of winter, a period traditionally associated with death. On the eve of the New Year, it was believed that the barriers between the worlds of the living and the dead were temporarily withdrawn, and it was possible to communicate with spirits. The Celts believed that the spirits offered them guidance and protection, and the Druids, Celtic priests, were reputedly able to predict the future on this point. When the Romans completed their conquest of Celtic lands, they added their own flavour to this festival. The advent of Christianity brought about yet other changes. Theme 8, Transportation. Reading Comprehension. Reading 1. Steamboats were shallow draft boats, propelled by steam-driven paddle wheels. In the 19th century, they could be seen every day on rivers, particularly on the Mississippi River and its principal tributaries in the United States. The development of the steamboat as a practical means of transportation began in America in 1787. But it wasn't until 1811 that a steamboat was built specifically to travel along the lower Mississippi River. The boat, called appropriately the New Orleans, was built at Pittsburgh, PA, for Robert Fulton and Robert R. Livingston. In 1812, the two men began operating a regular steamboat service between New Orleans and Natchez, Mississippi. Their vessels traveled at 8 miles per hour downstream and 3 upstream. In 1816, Henry Miller Shreve launched his steamboat Washington, and soon became known as the father of Mississippi navigation, because he adapted the steamboat design to fit the shallow waters of the river. He installed the engine high up above the waterline and mounted it on a hull that was as shallow as that of a barge. He also added a tall second deck, and afterwards all Mississippi steamboats copied Shreve's design. From then on and until about 1870, the steamboat dominated the economy, agriculture and commerce of the middle area of the United States. By 1834, there were 1,200 steamboats, carrying not only cotton and sugar, but also passengers who enjoyed luxuriously appointed lounges with rich rugs, oil paintings and chandeliers. Many steamboats were famous for their chefs, orchestras and large staffs of maids and butlers to assist their cabin passengers. Steamboat pilots had to memorize or guess at the depths of the river and its potential obstacles along long stretches of river in order to navigate safely. The average lifespan of a steamboat was only 4 to 5 years, because most of the vessels were poorly constructed and maintained. They sank after hitting sandbars and hidden rocks in the river, and many of their boilers exploded, causing many deaths among their passengers. By 1870s, railroads had become more efficient modes of transport and gradually caused the retirement of almost all the steamboats from the rivers. Theme 8. Transportation. Reading Comprehension. Reading 2. Early mariners gradually developed ways of observing and recording in their journals their position, the distances and directions they travelled, the currents of wind and water, and the hazards and havens they encountered. The information in these journals enabled them to find their way home, and for them, or their successors, to repeat and extend the recorded voyages. Each new observation could be added to an ever-increasing body of reliable information. Ship captains and navigators were not concerned about running into other vessels, but as heavy traffic developed along shipping routes, avoiding such collisions became a serious matter. In all fields of navigation, keeping a safe distance between ships moving in different directions at different speeds became as important as knowing how to reach one's destination. The larger the ship, the easier it is to see, but the larger a ship, the more time it requires to change its speed or direction. When many ships are in a small area, an action taken by one ship to avoid colliding with another might endanger a third. In busy seaports such as Hamburg and New York, this problem has been solved by assigning incoming and outgoing ships to separate lanes, which are clearly marked and divided by the greatest practical distance. The speed of jet airplanes makes collision a deadly possibility. Even if two pilots see one another in time to begin evasive action, their maneuvers may be useless if either pilot incorrectly predicts the other's move. Ground-based air traffic controllers assign aircraft to flight paths that keep airplanes a safe distance from one another. When steam engines began to replace sails during the first half of the 19th century, a ship's navigator had to compute fuel consumption as well as course and location. Today, in airplanes as well as in ships, large amounts of fuel needed for long trips reduce the cargo capacity, and economy requires that its consumption be kept to a minimum. In modern air and sea navigation, a schedule has to be met. A single voyage or flight is only one link in a complicated and coordinated transportation network that carries goods and people from any starting place to any chosen destination. Modern navigation selects a ship's course, avoids collision with other moving ships, minimizes fuel consumption, and follows an established timetable.